Imagine standing before someone you care for deeply, your heart open, offering a simple gesture, something as small as ordinary and as profound as a kiss. And yet, in that moment, it's met with avoidance. Not because they don't feel something, but because the very act of closeness threatens them. It unsettles the delicate balance of control they cling to. It mirrors back parts of themselves they are unwilling to face. You see, this avoidance is not cruelty, it is a silent confession of fear. A fear that to truly touch another is to risk being touched in return, to risk vulnerability. And when you, with your empathy, offer authenticity, transparency, and warmth, it is not always received as love, but as a reflection too intense to bear. Tonight, we explore the hidden truths behind the kiss narcissists avoid. We uncover the quiet language of fear and desire, of longing and defense, and we see how what is withheld is as telling as what is shared. Because in understanding their avoidance, we glimpse the complex dance of human connection, and we begin to understand how love, when met with fear, can teach us about ourselves in ways nothing else can. When we think of a kiss, most of us imagine it as a bridge, a momentary collapse of distance between two people, a soft gesture that carries trust, desire, and vulnerability all at once. It is one of the simplest ways we say, without words, I see you, I am here, I am open to you. And yet, for a narcissist, the act of receiving or giving such intimacy can feel like stepping onto a stage where the spotlight exposes every insecurity, every hidden fracture of their sense of self. To the casual observer, avoidance may seem irrational, even petty, but beneath that surface lies a profound and almost desperate strategy of self-preservation. Narcissists have learned, often unconsciously, that intimacy is dangerous. It demands honesty and authenticity, and it threatens to pierce the carefully constructed armor they present to the world. That armor, built from years of surviving emotional neglect, judgment, or even trauma, is thin in places, fragile in others, and the kiss, a fleeting, intimate connection, strikes at the very core of what they protect above all else, control over their own vulnerability. To understand why a narcissist avoids such gestures, it helps to appreciate how deeply they fear exposure. Vulnerability, for them, is not an avenue to connection, it is a threat. It is the fear that if they allow someone close enough to witness their true feelings, the shame, the self-doubt, the dependence, they will lose authority over the narrative of their own identity. The kiss, innocuous as it may seem, is an invitation to surrender a small piece of that authority. It demands presence, honesty, and a willingness to risk being known in ways that their inner landscape is not prepared to withstand. And so, avoidance becomes a defense. By stepping back, by refusing, by sidestepping the intimacy, they protect themselves from the cave will inevitably follow. In their mind, it is safer to retreat than to risk collapse, safer to hide behind detachment than to be seen. It is important to recognize that this avoidance is not random, nor is it necessarily a reflection of a lack of feeling. On the contrary, the narcissist often experiences emotion intensely, but their engagement with it is tightly regulated, rehearsed, and guarded. The kiss, in its purest form, is raw and unfiltered. It is an expression of empathy and presence that cannot be staged or controlled. For someone who has built their sense of self around performance, manipulation, or calculated interactions, the unrestrained reality of a kiss can feel threatening. It does not allow for the carefully curated persona to remain intact, and that tension, the tension between the desire for connection and the need for self-protection, creates the avoidance we observe. This behavior is also deeply entwined with the narcissist's early experiences. Many have internalized, often unconsciously, the message that being seen fully results in pain, shame, or neglect. Over time, this leads to a pattern where closeness is equated with danger, and distance becomes synonymous with safety. The kiss then becomes a symbolic boundary. It is not merely a physical action to be avoided. It is a representation of the risk of losing oneself in the presence of another. Avoidance is thus a learned survival tactic, one that persists even when the individual craves connection, even when the heart wants what the mind is prepared to deny. It is fascinating, and somewhat tragic, that the very acts that human beings crave most, touch, warmth, acknowledgement, can become sources of tension and fear for a narcissist. The avoidance of a kiss illuminates the paradox of their existence. They desire closeness, but they fear it. They seek love, yet they retreat from the gestures that signify it most profoundly. This is why, in relationships with narcissists, the simplest acts of intimacy can be met with a withdrawal that feels incomprehensible. It is not personal in the way we normally interpret rejection. It is an echo of the internal struggle between vulnerability and survival, a reflection of a psyche that prioritizes self-preservation over emotional spontaneity. And within this avoidance lies a subtle lesson for those who encounter it. It teaches us that connection is not always straightforward, that emotional walls are not always built out of malice, but out of a need to survive experiences that have left deep scars. It reminds us that what appears as denial or coldness often conceals layers of fear, that the narcissist's reluctance to engage in something as intimate as a kiss is a protective mechanism, a strategy honed over years to guard against perceived threats to selfhood. And when we can perceive the avoidance in this way, not as personal attack, not as failure of affection, but as a complex interplay of fear, control, and survival, we gain a lens of empathy, insight, and understanding into the patterns that govern human intimacy and the ways in which self-preservation shapes even the most intimate gestures. Empathy is a subtle, almost magical quality. It allows one human being to sense, feel, and resonate with the inner life of another. To an empath, this is natural, even effortless. They feel the rhythm of emotions, the unspoken currents beneath words, the silent stories hidden behind gestures. And yet, for a narcissist, this very quality can feel threatening, destabilizing, and uncomfortable in a way that defies ordinary logic. The empath acts as a mirror, reflecting not just the desires, the warmth, or the openness of another person, but also the vulnerabilities, fears, and unacknowledged parts of the narcissist themselves. When an empath leans in with understanding and presence, the narcissist is confronted not only with love and acceptance, but also with an unflinching clarity about what lies beneath their carefully curated exterior. The kiss, the touch, the intimacy offered by the empath is more than a gesture. It is a mirror held up to the self, revealing cracks, insecurities, and the hidden truth of human longing that the narcissist is conditioned to deny or suppress. This mirror effect is not gentle for them. It is not a comforting reflection, but a piercing one. The narcissist is accustomed to controlling the reflection the world sees, shaping their image, sculpting interactions, and managing impressions to maintain the illusion of completeness, mastery, and stability. And then comes the empath, unguarded and transparent, offering presence that cannot be staged. Every small gesture of genuine connection, every expression of vulnerability or attunement, is like a beam of light illuminating parts of the narcissist that they prefer to remain in shadow. It is no wonder, then, that they instinctively recoil from it. The empath's ability to sense, to resonate, to mirror back the truth of another person's emotional state, acts as a kind of exposure for the narcissist, a momentary collapse of the barriers they have spent a lifetime erecting. The kiss becomes symbolic of this collapse, a fleeting opportunity to bridge the gap, and yet simultaneously a threat, because it invites authenticity they are unprepared to inhabit. It is important to recognize that the mirror effect does not require conscious intention on the part of the empath. It is inherent in their way of being, the natural openness of their emotional perception. When a narcissist avoids a kiss, it is often because even this small, intimate action carries the weight of recognition. They are seen for who they are, beyond the persona, beyond the defenses, beyond the calculated presentation. The empath's attunement exposes emotional truth in ways that words cannot. It reveals longing, unmet needs, and the patterns of avoidance and defense that govern the narcissist's behavior. This reflection can be startling, uncomfortable, and at times unbearable, because it challenges the narcissist to confront realities they are not equipped or willing to process. The mirror effect also explains why narcissists often vacillate between attraction and avoidance, desire and withdrawal. The empath draws them in, offering authenticity, understanding, and warmth. But the closer they come, the more they are forced to see themselves reflected in ways that are dissonant with their constructed self-image. The kiss, a simple act of tenderness, becomes a battleground between desire for closeness and the fear of being fully exposed. In that brief moment, the narcissist is both enticed and repelled, pulled toward connection and pushed away by the very mirror of it awakens feelings they have long learned to deny or control. This dynamic is also subtle in its psychological texture. The empath does not confront, they simply exist, they simply feel, they simply mirror. The narcissist perceives this as both alluring and threatening, because it is impossible to dominate or manipulate the clarity of genuine emotional resonance. Unlike interactions with those who respond to performance or artifice, the empath does not enable avoidance through pretense. They do not offer the false reassurance that all is well. Instead, they reflect reality, not as judgment, but as presence. And this presence forces the narcissist into a confrontation with aspects of self they would rather ignore. The kiss becomes an unwitting test, a moment in which they are asked to step into honesty and connection, or retreat into the safety of emotional control. In observing this pattern, we begin to see the profound complexity of human intimacy. The empath's gift, their openness, their sensitivity, illuminates not only the beauty of connection, but also the shadows of fear, avoidance, and defensive strategy in those they encounter. The narcissist's avoidance is not a denial of affection but a response to reflection too sharp, too revealing, and too destabilizing to face. And in understanding this, we gain insight into the delicate interplay between empathy and narcissism, the subtle ways in which presence can evoke both longing and fear, and the hidden cost of offering authenticity to someone who is not yet prepared to meet it. There is a subtle language that often goes unnoticed, a language spoken not with words but with gestures, expressions, and the quiet rhythms of human connection. A kiss, a lingering touch, a moment of eye contact. These are not merely physical acts but carriers of emotional truth. They are the punctuation marks in the sentences of our hearts, the way we translate longing, care, and presence into something tangible. And yet, for the narcissist, this language is fraught with tension because it communicates not only love but also fear, not only intimacy but also vulnerability. When a narcissist avoids a kiss, they are not merely rejecting affection. They are responding to the weight of this hidden language, a language that speaks more honestly than any words could. The avoidance itself is a message, a reflection of the internal struggle between desire and self-preservation, between the craving for connection and the terror of exposure. The hidden language of love and fear operates on a level that is both universal and intensely personal. Everyone experiences it, but the narcissist experiences it differently, filtered through years of learned defense mechanisms, internalized judgments, and an almost instinctual need to control emotional exposure. For them, a kiss is not simply an exchange of warmth. It is a mirror held to their inner self, an echo of all the parts they have denied or hidden, a reflection of the love they long to feel, but are conditioned to distrust. And the fear embedded in this language is not irrational. It is historically, psychologically, and emotionally grounded. Early experiences of neglect, inconsistency, or conditional love create patterns where emotional risk is equated with danger. In adulthood, these patterns manifest subtly, in gestures, expressions, and moments of intimacy. The kiss becomes symbolic, a threshold between safety and vulnerability, and avoidance is the way the narcissist navigates this threshold without feeling completely unmoored. What is fascinating about this hidden language is how it communicates sunniestly in opposing directions. On one hand, the avoidance signals fear, a retreat, a defense. On the other, it also signals desire, a recognition that the inferred is meaningful, potentially transformative, and deeply affecting. To the observer, this may seem contradictory, confusing, even maddening, but within the psychic landscape of the narcissist, it is consistent, coherent, and deeply protective. The very act of avoidance is itself an attempt to preserve a fragile equilibrium. They are drawn to the connection, compelled by the promise of closeness, yet repelled by the vulnerability it requires. The kiss, the simplest expression of mutuality and warmth, becomes a silent battleground, an arena where love and fear collide with profound intensity. This interplay of love and fear also illuminates why relationships with narcissists can feel simultaneously magnetic and destabilizing. The empath, or the partner who is emotionally open, experiences the push and pull, the oscillation between intimacy and withdrawal, attraction and avoidance. Each gesture of avoidance is coded with meaning. It is a signal that the narcissist recognizes the emotional currency of the moment, but is unwilling or unprepared to spend it. The hidden language they speak is one of protection, not denial, a language that says, "I am drawn to you, yet I must guard myself. I long to feel, yet I cannot risk being fully seen." In this way, the kiss they avoid is not just a physical refusal but a narrative of fear and desire, a communication that cannot be articulated in ordinary terms, but is profoundly real in its impact. Understanding this hidden language transforms the way we interpret behavior. We begin to see avoidance not as rejection or malice, but as a deeply human response to the complex, sometimes contradictory demands of love and fear. We recognize that the narcissist is not incapable of affection. They are capable, in fact, of feeling deeply, but that their expression of it is filtered through a lifetime of protective strategies. The avoidance of a kiss is a message as potent as the kiss itself. It speaks of longing restrained, of connection deferred, of emotional landscapes shaped by fear as much as by desire. And in noticing these patterns, we gain the ability to read the nuances of relational dynamics, to perceive what is communicated beyond words, and to appreciate the intricate ways in which human beings negotiate intimacy, trust, and vulnerability with one another. The hidden language of love and fear also challenges our own perceptions. It asks us to see beyond the surface, to attend to the subtle gestures, the micro-expressions, and the pauses that carry meaning. It teaches us that avoidance is rarely absolute. It is relational, contingent, and filled with nuance. The kiss that is withheld is as informative as the kiss that is given. It tells a story of internal conflict, of a psyche negotiating desire and self-protection, of a person who simultaneously longs for closeness and fears its consequences. In attending to this language, we cultivate insight, compassion, and discernment, learning to perceive not only what is present, but also what is withheld, but only the expression of love, but also the patterns of fear that shape its boundaries.